Netflix handed Guillermo del Toro a blank check to reinvent Frankenstein.
What could possibly go wrong?
What they got was 2.5 hours of gothic poetry, and somehow a whole lot of nothing underneath.
Well, that's not good.
Frankenstein is one of those stories that feels untouchable. It's been adapted, reimagined, modernized, deconstructed, and mythologized so many times that any new version has to answer a hard question right away. Why this version and why now? Del Toro's answer is to turn the story into a gothic poem. Lush visuals, heightened language, tragic inevitability. This isn't horror and it's not really drama either. It's a meditation on obsession, regret, and the damage done when genius outruns responsibility. The problem, at least for me, is that poetry alone doesn't guarantee emotional weight. And while this Frankenstein is meticulously crafted, reverent, and often beautiful, I'm not sure it ever made me feel much of anything. And with that in mind, welcome back to The Rank. I'm John, and just a quick heads up on format. I'll hit a handful of behind the scenes facts in the potent notables, then I'll do a movie overview with spoilers, and I'll finish by ranking the movie in 10 categories. And today I'm going to continue ranking the 2025 Best Picture nominees with Frankenstein, starring Oscar Isaac and Jacob Elordi, adapted from the novel by Mary Shelley, by Guillermo del Toro, who also directed. Frankenstein is nominated for 9 Academy Awards, including Best Original Score, Best Costume Design, Best Sound, Best Production Design, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Best Cinematography, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Supporting Actor for Jacob Elordi, and of course, Best Picture. But let's see how this one stacks up, starting with the potent notables.
Potent notables.
So as always, we start the potent notables with the box office info. Now, according to the numbers, Frankenstein made nothing domestically and $481,000 internationally against a budget of $120 million. But this is a Netflix movie, so the theater run was expected to be short and not in too many theaters. However, it got 29 million views on Netflix in its first 3 days, making it one of Netflix's biggest debuts of 2025. Now, casting-wise, the role of the creature went through a major late change. Andrew Garfield was originally cast, but had to drop out due to scheduling conflicts. He was replaced by Jacob Elordi, which created a pretty intense behind-the-scenes scramble. The makeup team had already spent 9 months designing Garfield's version of the creature, and then had just a few weeks to completely rework it for Elordi. Playing the creature became the most demanding role of Jacob Elordi's young career. He routinely spent up to 10 hours a day in the makeup chair, sometimes arriving at 10 p.m. the night before just to be ready for early call times. Del Toro eventually came to believe that Elordi was superhuman, saying never once did he complain. Never once did he say he was tired or hungry. He put in 20-hour days. Elordi somehow loved it. He's said, "It's the most I've felt at home playing a character, the most comfortable I've ever been," which is kinda crazy. The look of the creature is based on illustrations by Bernie Wrightson, who created the artwork for the 1983 Frankenstein graphic novel. There's also a layered casting choice that's easy to miss on first viewing. Mia Goth plays both Victor Frankenstein's mother, Claire, and his love interest, Elizabeth Harlander. This was a deliberate decision to reinforce the film's Oedipal themes, and it allowed Del Toro to explore Victor's lifelong yearning for his mother through a single performer. And finally, as Victor Frankenstein himself, Oscar Isaac was Del Toro's only choice for the role. There was no shortlist, no backup plan. Isaac was it. But those are all the potent notables. Let's move on to the movie overview. So we start the movie with a prelude in the farthermost north in 1857. We see some sort of Arctic expedition that the Danes have undertaken. The captain is single-minded and seems to be promoting a mutiny with his single-mindedness. He's not willing to even listen to the crew's desire to go home. He must complete his mission. What does this have to do with Frankenstein, you ask? Well, nothing really, but we're gonna find out soon that Victor Frankenstein just happens to be nearby. An explosion is gonna happen in the distance, and the captain and his crew are gonna go check it out. What they find is an injured Oscar Isaac, playing Victor Frankenstein, and eventually a roaring humanoid beast that they just innately know is in the wrong and start shooting at. Now, the ship that they're on is stuck in the ice, and they've been trying to cut the boat free. But once they've got a monster to contend with, they decide to use a blunderbuss. And though it doesn't kill the monster, they realize they can break the ice with the blunderbuss. Seems like maybe they could have used that to break the ice earlier, but you know, hindsight's 2020, right? Either way, the beast sinks into the water, under the ice after waiting there for a really long time for it to fall out from under him. He just sort of stands there like, duh, what do I do? But Victor's going to tell the captain that he should just let the monster take him. And to explain why, he's going to tell his entire life story. Now, he's going to start this story by telling the captain, some of what I tell you is fact, some is not, but all is true. Now, if I was captain of the ship and I had just lost 6 of my crew protecting this rando, I think I would have been kind of annoyed at a statement like that. But that's sort of what happens with this movie. Guillermo del Toro decided he wanted to turn a movie into a poem, flowering the edges with lyricism, painting the background with vivid imagery. But has he added any depth? Well, we're going to move on to part 1. Part 1 is Victor's tale. We find out about his upbringing and how he seemingly had an Oedipal complex with his mom, which therefore made him hate his dad. Not that his dad was a particularly warm man. So we sort of see the dad being kind of a hard ass to Victor as he's teaching him to be a surgeon, just like him. And we also see that his mom is pregnant. Now, his mom is going to start going into labor right as his dad's about to leave again, and we get an intimation that his dad doesn't stay around for very long. But we can see that it's a particularly painful labor, and it's clearly set up for her to die in childbirth. And die she does. The kid survives, though. William, this kid, unlike Tyrion, ends up being favored by the father. He's loving to him in a way that Victor never got to experience. So, Victor's lost his mom, and now he's got sibling jealousy. And this is what's going to birth in him the desire to conquer death. He's going to become a better surgeon than his father ever was, and he's going to beat death. So soon thereafter, we're going to see him doing a medical presentation in Edinburgh in 1855. And he seemingly reanimates a corpse that is just a torso. Now, the crowd is on his side, but the judges aren't. They say it's an abomination. But while he's giving this presentation, a really rich-looking Christoph Waltz walks in and looks on interestedly. Who is he? Well, he's Herr Harlander. And he's going to end up becoming Victor's benefactor. He offers Victor unlimited resources to make his dream of conquering death come true. But that's not all he is. He's also the uncle of Victor's little brother's fiance, and that's how he's able to get an introduction to Victor. It's not going to take long for Victor to fall in love with his brother's fiance. She seems to take a liking to him as well. And then we get the ubiquitous period piece, old-timey choreographed dancing scene. It's depicted so often in these movies that one can only assume that that's just what rich people did back then. The love triangle that wasn't really a love triangle is going to continue. I say it's not really a love triangle because William, who would be one end of that triangle, seems unaware of their affections. Though, to Elizabeth's credit, she never really acts on them, despite Victor's pursuit. And, there's definitely a correlation between the way he felt about his mother and the way he's feeling about his brother's fiance. It seems he likes the forbidden fruit. Of course, Elizabeth is going to end up giving Victor his eureka moment when she talks about butterfly symmetry. And then Victor's going to be like, symmetry, of course! I'll just move the spikes up 2 inches and now it's perfect! So he's going to collect a bunch of dead bodies from a battlefield, bring them back to his laboratory in Liechtenstein that Herr Harlander gave to him, and then he's going to cut up the bodies and piece them together. And right as he's about to make it happen, Herr Harlander makes his quid pro quo request. I gave you the money, I want to be in that body. Why? Because he's got syphilis. Victor denies him, saying, you're infected everywhere, so it's not going to work. But Herr Harlander insists so hard that he eventually falls to his death in his insistence. So he doesn't end up living to see the beast come to life. And at first, Victor is excited about this. But then he ends up going kind of crazy. Or more crazy, I guess. And I have to say, I'm glad Victor didn't have kids, because he clearly wasn't ready for them. He spends like 2 weeks with the beast and is upset because the beast just says Victor a lot. Or I guess the creature. And so when William, Victor's brother, and his fiancée Elizabeth show up, Elizabeth is fascinated by the creature. But Victor's done at this point. He's going to blame the creature for the death of Herr Harlander and convinces his brother to keep it a secret from Elizabeth. And then we get a funny bit of foreshadowing when William asks Victor what the creature's lifespan is, and Victor says brief. He's immortal, so not brief. Victor's decided to destroy everything. He sets fire to the laboratory and ends up blowing up his leg because of it. He thinks he's destroyed everything, including the creature, but we know that's not true because they're both in the Arctic right now, in present time. And we're going to actually go back to that present, back to the captain's quarters, and guess who's finally made it there? The creature. He's going to come into the captain's quarters and just be like, I'm here, and then Victor's going to say, I was just telling this guy about our story. And then the creature, who has killed at least 6 of the crew members so far to get to Victor, is like, well, if you've told your story, then I guess I should tell mine. What? So he's been dying to reach Victor. He's there now, and he's just gonna stop and tell a story. And how fortuitous that he picks up the story right where Victor left off. How do you know? Now, the creature story is much more quiet and contemplative. It's like 70 minutes or so of him learning how to talk and living in a barn. Eventually, he's going to befriend an old blind man and figure out that people will never accept him unless they're blind, apparently, because he looks so gross. And there's actually a scene before he finds the barn that he's going to stay in where these men see him and go, "What's that?" and just start shooting at him. Because, you see a tall guy, you shoot. Now, apparently, the creature has forgotten his time in Victor's laboratory, and the blind guy helps convince him to go looking for it. And he's going to find the ruins of this destroyed laboratory. The fire has consumed the stone, knocked down the pillars, basically just destroyed everything, except for the highly flammable papers from Victor's experiment journal, which also is lying in the snow now. And those are all good. A little singed, not wet though, all good. It's a miracle. But this is how the creature learns what he is and who Victor is. When he gets back to the cottage, the blind guy has been mauled by wolves, or is actually being mauled by wolves. And even though the creature has ripped the skin off of these living wolves, by the time the other guys get back, the wolves are gone, and they're gonna be like, "What'd you do to him?" And they shoot the creature a bunch, and then leave him for dead. But he's not dead, you'll be shocked to find out. No, he knows now his purpose is to find Victor, and have Victor make him a companion, because he can't die, which means he's gonna be lonely. So after this, with the creature still presumably telling the story to the Danish captain, we get a scene between Victor and his brother. How'd the creature know this part? Don't know, but he did, I guess. The wedding between William and Elizabeth is upcoming, and Victor wants to apologize to Elizabeth for everything, and he says he's filled with regret, but she slaps him and tells him to stop lying. And after this, he goes back to his room, and now the creature is there. He's gonna ask for a companion. Victor's gonna say no. The creature's gonna indulge in his rage, of which he has a limitless amount, apparently. Now, these were the actual lines to give you an idea of the lyricism that they were going for. And then Elizabeth is gonna discover the beast and is just smitten with him, and then tries to protect him, which ends up getting her shot and killed by Victor. Naturally, Victor is gonna blame the creature, who tosses everyone and ends up killing William as well. But in William's dying words, he doesn't blame the beast. He tells Victor that Victor is the monster, not the beast. So then we get a scene with Elizabeth dying with the creature and telling him how great he is and how she's ready to fade. And this is gonna prompt 20 to 30 minutes of Victor hunting the beast up to the Arctic and what transpired between them before the ship's crew arrived. And what transpired was that the beast held onto a stick of dynamite in the hopes that it would kill him, and it blew up, but didn't kill him, obviously. Up to this point, we've seen him shot and bleeding and all that jazz. I mean, the guys from the barn cottage place put him out of commission for a decent amount of time after shooting him a few times. But a stick of dynamite? He just remains standing. Didn't blow his hands off or anything. And that leads us to now. And then Victor's gonna apologize, call the creature his son, and then ask him to say his name again in the way he did when he was first created, when it meant the world to him. And then the creature's gonna say that he's not gonna be punished or absolved. Whatever hope or rage that he had is nothing, and that he's being left stranded with his immortality. But he's gonna forgive Victor and say his name, Victor. Victor dies, and then the creature calls him father and tells him to rest now. That's not the end of the movie, though. You see, the beast has to leave the ship, right? And he's killed at least 6 guys, remember? And only the captain has heard this story. So naturally, the captain is gonna make them just let the creature leave without any explanation. But then the creature is gonna set the ship free of the ice, and the captain decides to turn around and go home. So apparently he did see something of himself in Victor, the dogged determination to achieve a mission. So this whole story is about this Danish sea captain realizing the error of his ways and turning around and going home. After that decision, we close up on the creature's face as the sun rises over the Arctic ice and it illuminates his face. His skin now finally looks human. But that's it. That's the whole movie. Let's see how it ranked.
A rank.
So the rank is where I rank the movie based on 10 categories: story, acting, originality, film coherence, cinematography, score/soundtrack/sound, script structure and dialogue, character relatability, production value, and my rank. I rank it on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. And before I dive into the rankings, I just want to say, if you're enjoying this episode of The Rank, please leave a like down below. It really does help me out. But without further ado, the first category is story. It's a classic story, right? I mean, man tries to overcome death and succeeds, but really fails due to his own hubris. I won't deny the story its props. I gave it an 8.5. So that brings us to acting. And the acting is good enough. There's a lot of hamminess to it, which I think was intended, but I didn't find it all that impressive. Oscar Isaac was admittedly really good though. I actually thought Christoph Waltz and Felix Kammerer were really good as well. Mia Goth was decent. I think she was given weird expectations of what they wanted from her. I gave it a 7.75. And that brings us to originality. I mean, it's a Frankenstein movie. I'm not really sure where this is original. I guess Herr Harlander is like an original character. And I'm trying to think of a way not to give it a terrible score, but I just don't see how. I gave it a 2. That brings us to film coherence. This is not a good category for this movie. We get the creature telling parts of a story that he couldn't have been privy to. We get the weird Arctic storyline. But most of all, we get a movie that could have been 100 minutes, end up at 150. People just shoot at another human without asking any questions. The creature just happens to pick up the story right where Victor left off. And the idea that he starts telling the story at all is goofy. But for both of them, Victor and the creature. And Elizabeth seems to be in love with the creature, but when did that happen? And why does Victor get forgiveness? He finally said he was sorry? Whoop-de-doo! I gave it a 5.5. So that brings us to cinematography. The cinematography was pretty, but I felt like they muted the colors too much. I get that they were going for that horror movie vibe, but it just felt too much at times. Like there's not a nice day ever? Does the sun really never come out? I gave it an 8. That brings us to score/soundtrack/sound. The score is good. It was pretty and effective and fit the style of movie that Del Toro was going for, that of a horror movie that wanted to be lyrical. I gave it an 8.5. So script structure and dialogue is next. The script was too pretty. It liked itself and its prose too much. The lyrical sweeping gestures of the pen that wrote it wanted everyone to feel how genius it was. And there are definitely lines that stuck out as very beautiful and or deep. But it felt like when I was first trying to ask girls out, it tried too hard. I gave it a 7. That brings us to character relatability. I didn't really have much empathy for anyone in this. Elizabeth is just weird, and I never really got that she was all that close to the creature. I mean, when she first sees him, I sorta got it, but after that, Victor is relatable in that he's maniacal. Herr Harlander is relatable in his quest to beat Father Time, but nobody was really making me feel strongly for them, one way or another. Not even the creature, which I think hurt it more than anything. I gave it a 7. So that brings us to production value. And this is obviously where it shines the most. They do beautiful set work. And it's only slightly offset by the weird and bad CGI wolves and sheep. But I'm not going to knock it too much for that because that's a small part. So I gave it a 9.5. And that brings us to my rank. This wasn't a bad movie, but I just never really cared about it all that much. It felt like Del Toro watched last year's Nosferatu and was like, I want to do that. But instead tried way too hard to give us humanity over spectacle and ended up kind of giving us just a fraction of both. I really wanted to like this. And maybe that's what brings my score down a bit, because I just felt kind of blah about it. I gave it a 6. So altogether, that puts Frankenstein at a 69.75, which makes it a mediocre. This puts it last so far for the 2025 nominees, behind F1 the movie. As far as all time, this puts it just below Elizabeth and just above Seventh Heaven from 1927. And if you're ranking along with me, drop your scores in the comments. But either way, thanks for listening and or watching. Check out my other Best Picture nominee rankings or any of my other movie or sitcom rankings on this channel. Remember to subscribe, comment, and like. For up-to-date rankings, check out my website at therankedpodcast.com, where you can also email me at john@therankedpodcast.com. And if you really want to support the show, you can become a patron at patreon.com/therankedpodcast. But all right, I'm gonna bolt. Frankenstein bolts. You know, the neck bolts.
No.
Okay. Playing the creature became the most demanding role.
Cut!
Playing the creature became...
Cut!
Playing the creature became the most...
Cut! Take 3.
Playing the creature became the most demanding.
We're gonna be here a while.